The Smithsonian thought we wouldn't notice.
Here's a brief telling video. The director of Museum of American History, Americans are illegitimately occupying their own country.
And after Burchett played those clips, Brandon Gill followed up with a series of pointed questions, exposing just how out of touch the museum's leadership had become.
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
And today, we're breaking it all down. So here we go.
But the museum has strayed, I believe, from the original purpose for which it exists and receives federal taxpayer support. I feel like it's become infected by a woke ideology that's seeped into public displays, educational materials, and planning documents. The American story is the birth and growth of a great nation founded on powerful ideals on which we aim to fully achieve. But in the museum's current telling, history is just an ongoing power struggle between oppressors and the oppressed. A museum display even accuses Mickey Mouse of having racist origins. The report makes clear that the museum's woke exhibits and materials reflect a broader vision held by the museum leadership, particularly its director, Dr. Anthea Hartig, who is here today with us. Dr. Hartig proudly takes credit for changing the museum's mission statement, which no longer uses the term American history or refers to the infinite richness of that history. The museum is now guided by an interpretive plan that ensures all topics focus on the core issues of our time. And do we want to guess what they are? Race and identity, gender and sexuality, environmental change, immigration and migrations, and economic inequality top the list.
So this hearing came after the White House released a report in early July detailing how the Smithsonian had increasingly begun interpreting American history through the lens of race, gender, colonialism, and systems of oppression. For example, one absurd exhibit that they presented was the Electric Dr. Franklin, which pondered whether the founding father had ever done electrical experiments on servants or slaves. The problem is that even the Smithsonian's own website explicitly states the records are few and unclear. Okay, that's not the type of thing people need from a history museum because there's no solid evidence, and anyone can turn speculation into a narrative that fits a political agenda. Naturally, that raises a fair question. Where are these ideas coming from? Tim Burchett had the answer lined up, and he laid it out through a series of clips.
Here's a brief telling video. The director of Museum of American History, in her public remarks, repeatedly implies Americans are illegitimately occupying their own country.
Before we begin, let us pause to acknowledge with gratitude the Native peoples on whose land we gather today. These are the ancestral homelands of the Piscataway people, joined by the Nacotchtank and the Paumanki tribes, and of course their descendants. We acknowledge the Native peoples more broadly of the Americas.
Wherever you are, at this moment, give thanks to the first people on whose land we live, love, struggle, and work. So wherever you are at this moment, give thanks to the first peoples on whose land we're honored to live, love, struggle, work, preserve, care, and do our work. We give our respect and our gratitude to all of them for the opportunity to work and to live in their territories.
Listen, if she genuinely believes we're living on stolen land, then why not lead by example? Before moving to Washington, Anthea reportedly lived in San Francisco, where she served as the executive director and CEO of the California Historical Society. She then became the director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. So wouldn't the home she lives in, or perhaps even owns, also sit on what she describes as stolen land? If that's really the principle, why not just give it back? I mean, believe it or not, what you've heard so far is nothing compared to what Brandon Gill uncovered through his questioning. It all centered on this internal toolkit that the museum apparently used to guide discussions with its own employees. It's kind of shocking.
Would you say that the goal of history, even if it's not properly carried out, would you say that the goal of history is to be objective?
I think that there are many goals of history, and certainly as you collect, as we do, examine evidence, create scholarship.
Is objectivity one of the goals of history?
We strive to be objective and nonpartisan and not based on any ideology.
So it's one of the goals. Doesn't that seem a little bit concerning? It certainly does to me, because as part of this white supremacy document that your organization has promoted, objectivity is a core and defining aspect of white supremacy culture. Do you think that it's the goal of the Smithsonian Institution to promote white supremacy culture?
Sir, do you mind sharing with me which document?
It's white supremacy culture right here. This is part of the mass action toolkit that your organization has promoted for several years now under your leadership.
Am I promoting a white?
Ma'am, is this a difficult question?
No, sir, I'm just thinking about the mass action toolkit. We didn't develop it.
Yeah, so the toolkit wasn't written by the Smithsonian itself, I get that, but it was used during internal discussions with the staff. So the document itself is so bizarre, you'll find the word white more than 150 times, with entire sections devoted to warning about white supremacy. One part identifies 13 different characteristics of it, which include things like perfectionism, sense of urgency, fear of open conflict, individualism, objectivity, and the right to comfort. Then it argues many of these are present in the culture of many museums. So just think about that for a second. If values like objectivity and striving for excellence are being portrayed as warning signs, it's not really hard to see why the White House would issue this whole report arguing that the institution was ideologically captured. It kind of makes sense. Brandon brought up another absurd example, and it caught Anthea completely off guard.
It's not for me to determine what's problematic, it's determined to me what's accurate.
Is that right?
Yes,
is it important to be polite?
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage of the Mass Action Toolkit, which is not
I can show you the
one that we
passage. It's right
developed.
here.
Pardon me?
I said I just read you the passage from it.
And then your question was, sir?
We're going to move on.
It really drives me insane how she sat there in silence writing first. That's disrespectful. But I think it's fair to say that she knew more than she let on. Throughout this hearing, she conveniently acted unaware whenever the questions became uncomfortable. And what's really concerning is seeing this kind of revisionist approach applied to American history by the very institution people trust to preserve it. Of course, many historical figures had flaws. We get that. They were products of their own time, just like every single generation is. But that's very different from filtering their lives through a modern ideological lens to fit today's political narratives. In simpler terms, activism shouldn't replace objectivity in institutions that are supposed to educate and bring the country together, which is why a course correction at the Smithsonian is much needed. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, you heard it here at the Dais.